that's one of the great parts about the War Within, is since it's the beginning of a saga, we have these awesome characters that are coming with us. That's tough. That's kind of like picking your favorite child as a developer. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, ultimately, it's not too uncommon for us to actually think about our storylines from the perspective of, we're trying to make sure that we're looking ahead every time we're developing, expansions and new stories or new villains in World of Warcraft. This time's just unique in that we actually are kind of sharing that and inviting our players to come on that journey with us. And, we want to tease out, like what we mentioned at BlizzCon. There's some really high level ideas that we have shared, but I think that's part of the fun is seeing how that story unfolds, right? It's almost like, I love TV shows or movies where they almost show you the ending, and it's like 3 hours earlier or whatever, right? It's just a different way of telling stories that I think can still be really exciting and compelling, and are also providing really fun opportunities, right? Like I have really loved the excitement and engagement in the community where they're, speculating on things like, well, we know what's happening with Dalaran, so what's our major city going to be in The Last Titan, right? And there's fun speculation and people who get to share in those ideas with the community. So certainly, to your point, there are risks, there are challenges that the team is going to have to navigate in terms of making sure that each individual expansion feels like a cohesive story that has a satisfying beginning, middle, and end, and people feel like they're then excited for this next chapter of the World Soul Saga. So, this is a new method of storytelling, but something that the team is really energized by, and we're really excited to have such a experienced and awesome creative director and Chris Metzen coming back. So, it's really something that the team has been energized by this new challenge ahead of us. Skywriting is something that, being, completely transparent, wasn't something that we were sure would be coming out of Dragonflight with us initially, right? We weren't sure, hey, is this going to be an evergreen feature? Is this something that is just going to be unique and stay in Dragonflight? And ultimately, the fact that we brought it forward really was influenced by the community and influenced by, just how exciting and engaging that is to play. I always have said, dragon riding, now known as skywriting, really changes the way that I interact with the world, right? Like previously, I might have just, hit auto run and ran across the zone, ran down a path, but now I view the world through a completely different lens. Any big cliff I see, I'm like, oh, can I jump off that and get some momentum as I skyride to the next point of interest or next questing space? And when it came to the War Within and changes there, certainly that one of the major changes we made is the skywriting glyphs, the things that you had to explore in the world to, kind of unlock abilities. We wanted to make that more of a exploration perk instead of something that felt required to unlock the capabilities on your skywriting mount. So in the War Within, you'll immediately have all the unlocks that you're familiar with from Dragonflight, and you won't need to kind of re-earn those abilities. That was something that we felt pretty strongly about, that we didn't want to take those away from you and make you re-earn them in the War Within. We want to just leave those with you as you go into the War Within. So I know a lot of people in Dragonflight, when they first started playing, the first thing they did is went and found all the glyphs, where if you want to do that now, you can, but it's almost entirely just for achievement purposes. It's not something that's required for functionality. So that's one of the major, changes coming into the War Within, as well as just, making sure that our zones were developed with, skywriting in mind. We want to make sure that these zones are epic and expansive and feel like they were developed with skywriting in mind. So there's a lot of fun, little spaces to kind of traverse through, and little bridges to fly under, and all kinds of fun stuff there. There's also some really neat but yeah, one of the other fun things about the War Within is, it's the first time that we've really built an expansion vertically, right? There's so much verticality where you start in the Isle of Dorn and then you just kind of go down, 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 and there's a lot of fun ways that the team has found to connect the different zones, right? So Aj-Kahet is one of the deepest zones in the expansion, but the team actually built a bit of a shortcut from Aj-Kahet up to the Ringing Deeps, which is the second zone that you would experience after the Isle of Dorn. So even though they're not connected from a the perspective of like this is how you traverse through the spaces, they are connected through like these epic tunnels that you can skyride up through, which is really fun. So definitely something that the team talked a lot about, and we're really excited to have skywriting as part of the evergreen feature set of World of Warcraft. Yeah, I mean, World of Warcraft, I think, is, we've been developing and it's been around. We're going on our 20th year, right? We're going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary coming up. And ultimately, that was one of the inspirations behind, developing the World Soul Saga and the War Within as a new way to tell stories and really kind of revisit the way that we develop World of Warcraft more holistically, right? Like we have in the past, we've found ourselves asking the question of, hey, how have we done that previously? And that can, lead us to make some decisions that we know will be exciting for some of our audience, but we wanted to take this as an opportunity to try something different and to be, to bring something fresh and exciting for not only our existing players, but potentially for players who haven't experienced World of Warcraft before either. And it really does feel like we've tried to present, this new story and this new world as an opportunity for players who might not have played World of Warcraft before to create a chance for them to come in at the start of something brand new and exciting that, everyone is going to be experiencing for the first time, including potentially new players. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the exciting things about World of Warcraft is while there are characters that have been with us for 20 years, I always like to talk about Anduin, right? Like Anduin was literally, like a little baby running around Stormwind, running around the throne room when we first started out in this adventure. And now we got to see him as, this epic character that we got to see him in Silithis with Thrall at the start and in the announcement of the War Within. And I feel like while having that context of who Anduin is and the journey he's been on is really valuable, we didn't want that to feel required. I feel like that, cinematic, for instance, was really exciting and compelling, even if you had no context about the history of Anduin. It's just two people in the moment, having a conversation. And we really wanted to make sure that there wasn't a requirement to have that understanding of the stories and of these individual characters. We just want to make sure that that is additive and makes something that if you've been with us, there might be some fun Easter eggs that you might see, but it isn't a requirement to follow along. And that's one of the great parts about the War Within is since it's the beginning of a saga, we have these awesome characters that are coming with us, but we're starting fresh, we're starting new with these characters and these ideas that are really enhanced by the history of World of Warcraft, not required to see them. Or not required to understand it, rather. We did, however, for people who do want to dive into that history and gain that additional context, there is, I want to say we called it The Story So Far, which was a video that we released not too long ago and actually plays when you log in for the first time in World of Warcraft. That kind of shows some of the history of, the events that led up to this moment, starting, all the way back in like Legion when Sargeras stabbed to the planet. And in case you want to know, what is that sword? Why is there a giant sword sticking out of Silithis? I think it adds a lot of texture to the story, but if you think about World of Warcraft as an RPG first and foremost, like a lot of us do, they're often the questions that you leave unanswered can sometimes add a lot of excitement to the story as well. So we want to make sure that there are opportunities for people to get that context if they want it, but it shouldn't be required to enjoy the World Soul Saga. Yeah, something that we're really excited about with the War Within is the introduction of delves. Delves are an all-new type of content that you'll be able to experience as you adventure in the War Within. One of the first things that you'll come upon while you're doing the main story questing through the Isle of Dorn is this delve that we take the players into, where they learn more about the Earthen, which are a faction of NPCs that are kind of creation of the Titans, which you're going to learn a lot more through the World Soul Saga. And delves are a solo or group experience. So if you want to play by yourself, if you want to play with just you and your partner, they'll actually scale from 1 to 5 players. And you'll be able to also experience it with an NPC companion who's with you that you can customize and set to different roles and kind of equip with different gear. And that really, we want you to be able to customize your experience to really, play the way that you want to play. And we feel like delves are an opportunity to provide new story and new opportunities for progression at the end game for those players who maybe only have a little bit of time to play. You know, something that I get questions about all the time is like, hey, I'm really busy. Maybe I've only got 10 or 15 minutes to play World of Warcraft, and I don't feel like I can really like make much progress on my character. And delves, we think, are a great opportunity to be able to give people that content and experience they're looking for, where maybe you know, you only have 10 minutes and we want delves to be a 10 to 15 minute experience, something that you can do really quickly. There's no time limits, and you and your NPC companion, which for season 1 of The War Within is Bran Bronzebeard, who's a fun Explorers League character. He's a dwarf who has a tremendous personality. He's got a ton of funny VO, and he also says some things that hopefully help you understand you know, the combat experience that you're playing in delves as well. I was on the beta last week, and Bran has a voiceover line where he says, "Look out!" And when he says that, usually that means that I'm standing in something I shouldn't be standing in, so I know to get out of the way. So that's something that, you know, the team really wanted to focus on, that solo experience, that player who loves the story of the world, and give them an opportunity to play some content that might be a little bit more challenging, or give them that experience of progression that some of our Raiders or Mythic Plus players have had that has been a little bit missing in the outdoor world. So that's something that I think is going to be really exciting for new players, or for players who maybe don't have a group that they play with consistently. That's tough. That's kind of like picking your favorite child as a developer. But I will talk about one of the zones that I think is really epic is, you know, initially when we talked about The War Within, when we talked about, you know, the continent of Khazalgar, like you mentioned, and it would be a lot of underground zones. I think one of the initial pieces of feedback we heard was people were that concerned about, is it going to be like claustrophobic? Is it going to be super dark? And the team talked about that at length as we were developing The War Within. And I think one of the spaces that you can really see the team and their, you know, brilliance is Hallowfall, which is one of the zones that you'll experience in The War Within, and it's this huge underground cavern. It's so vast and expansive. There's actually an ocean in the back of the zone that just looks like it goes on forever. And one of the most unique elements of it is there's this crystal called Merildar that is in the zone that actually is a light source for the zone. It's so epic seeing, you know, this underground space, but it actually feels like there's a sun and daylight, and there's a whole day-night cycle as that crystal actually changes color. So it feels like you're in this vast, epic, you know, zone that might normally be above ground, but you're actually underground and connected to some of these other spaces that do have some more traditional underground vibes. But that zone in particular, I think, is really, really cool and really subverts your expectations about what you think you might be seeing when you talk about an underground expansion. So that's something that I think is really, really cool, and I can't wait for players to experience that.